protocol?
I think I'm actually
Oh,
gonna.
you're doing, okay, thank you, Erica.
Sure. Welcome committee members, liaisons, and members of the public to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission's Executive Committee meeting. Thank you for joining us. We're using Zoom with the goal to foster a more inclusive environment and effective meeting. If you would like to comment during the meeting, please type I have a comment or I have a question in the chat, and a message will be sent to the host. Alternatively, you can also use the raise hand feature. In efforts of transparency for all those joining this public meeting, whether by phone or Zoom, we request that you refrain from having side conversations on chat about the content of the meeting. Again, the chat feature is utilized simply as a tool for you to virtually indicate that you would like to speak in order to help the chair facilitate the discussion. Please note, all Legal Services Trust Fund Commission and committee meetings are recorded and posted to the State Bar website. A friendly reminder that this is a video conference, and please be aware of your surroundings behind you.
So, well, we hit 12:02. Do you want to, why don't we'll do a roll call and.
Yeah, do you want to actually, do you guys want to
to?
send a quick text to Rich and see if he's having any troubles getting in?
Sure, I can do a quick email.
And so everyone, what we're doing today, my co-chair and I, Eric and I, this is our last official co-chairing of the XCOM, as we're passing the baton to Rich and to Kim and to the good folks who are coming as in their replacement. So we thought, you know, we can't do like a song and a dance and tip our hats or do anything like, so we just thought instead of all of that, we would co-chair this. And we're going to be co-chairing the last commission meeting together as well. So if you see us kind of going back and forth, Eric saying, all right, I'm passing the ball over to Madam Chanel, and I do the same, like we're tap dancing this last meeting together.
Sounds good. You could do a song and a dance.
I think we need to do like some kind of farewell, something, like we need something.
All right, should we do a roll call?
Sure, and I just sent Rich an email with the Zoom link.
Thanks, Juan.
Aglagi,
Yes, here.
Iskin,
Here.
Savage,
Here.
Rhinus, and I'll go down with the liaisons and staff as well. Selena Copeland. Present. Bonnie Huff, I don't see Bonnie. Christine Gonang, Mark Tony, Erica Carroll.
Here.
Brady Dewar, I don't see Brady either. Are there any other members of the public who would like to introduce yourself?
Oh, Claire Salat, let me allow her to talk.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Claire.
Everyone, it's wonderful to see you all. And Dwan, to answer your question, Ski Week was started, I believe, in the 1970s because parents were taking their kids out of school and they thought of it would simplify things. But as you said, times have changed and school schedules need to reflect that.
Well, I guess I'm just learning about it now, 40 years, 50 years later.
I'll tell you, we don't have Ski Week in the LA Unified School District.
It's definitely a Tahoe phenomenon.
Yeah. You know, I don't have the agenda in front of me, Dwan. So what are we looking at?
Are there any members of the public who would like to make a public comment? Claire, do you have a public comment?
Just delighted to be here with you and get an update on all the great work you've been doing. And happy to share anything about our LSFN Fellows program if you have questions for me.
Great, thank you, Claire. And then the next agenda item is the consent approval of the meeting action summary item from the June 25th meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, I have the wrong agenda up. That was
the June 11th meeting.
The June 11th meeting. Sorry, I was going to preview the other agenda and I had it up.
I'll motion.
Second.
Great. I'll do roll call. Aglagi.
Present. Yes.
Iskin.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes.
Rhinus. Oh, Rich is here.
Rich is here. Okay, great.
Yes.
Hi, Rich. We're just voting on the action summary from the previous executive committee.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No
Don't
problem.
be a yes man, Rich.
It's all good.
Rich is yes. Okay, motion passes.
Awesome. Great. And then we're just moving on to discussion. So do you want to take us through that?
Sure. So the first agenda item on the discussion is an update on the PLL grants, the provisional licensed lawyer grant. So we just want to let you know that all the invoices and checks have gone out except for 3, and I'll run down the reasoning why. So the first program is Family Violence Law Center, and they were not able to hire a PLL, and we actually asked them if they wanted an extension to see if there's somebody in the pipeline, but they wanted to turn down the funding. Then Inner City Law Center and Community Legal Aid SoCal, they have hired, but they're the application for the PL the attorney is still pending review from the state bar. So once that goes through, then we'll release the check, but that's one of the conditions that they need to be an actual PLL. So we're waiting for that. With Family Violence Law Center, if you recall, you delegated authority to staff just to go down to the next program. So Chris and I are taking a closer look at that. There were 5 programs, if you recall, that had the same score for the next grouping. So we're gonna have to take a closer look and see if there's like maybe a preference, if one of them does more work in rural or some other reason based on the rubric. But they are all an equal scoring.
And that's to use the money from the one organization that was not able to hire, or is it?
That's for the Family Violence Law Center one that's turning down. For the other 2, we're just hoping that they'll get their provisional license any day now. If it drags on more, too long, then I think we need to have a conversation with the program. And I think Chris and I are going to give them a call next week anyways, and just say, remind them we just can't issue their checks. And I mean, the ball is kind of in their court, but we do have language in the grant agreement. They know that in order to fulfill it, the hiring needs to be complete with a PLL. So it's a little bit out of their control. So I think we try to work with them for a few more weeks and then see.
So I have a question. This is more for Selena. It's sort of a little bit off point, but related. I have a friend whose daughter is a 3L. She's a blind law student, very interesting and very smart person, very interested in public service. And I said that I thought this would be a great time to be a public service lawyer, because it seems like there's a lot of money flowing in the world. Is that right, Selena, or anybody?
So I will say it's a great time if you're looking for a job in legal aid, because so many organizations are hiring. I think it's hard for legal aid programs because all of the public interest students can also work in government, which pays so much more. So I mean, compared to when Dwan and I graduated from law school, it was impossible to find a public interest job back then. Although we both started at One Justice, but it was very hard to find work back then. So yes, you can tell your friend's daughter that it's a great time to go into public service or public interest work. Dwan, I had a quick question.
You question yourself, right, Selena?
Do what?
You have a question as well, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Dwan, you said 5 programs had the same score?
Oh yeah, 5 programs for the next grouping. So we can go into like the commission gave us authority that staff can just go into like the next high score, but the next high score, they're 5, they all receive the same score. So Chris and I are gonna actually reread that they're all 5 of the applications. I think there was one that is urban rural, social justice collaborative. So we just have to confirm with them and see. And I think from Chris and I just need to go back and look at the action summary, but that was express preference, but that would be a standout. But we kind of don't know if they have a PLL. So I think we just have to review the application and then have a conversation.
Great. All right. Shall we go to the next agenda item?
Sure. And the next one is a staff update on grants administration. So just wanted to let you all know that we're still in the process of hiring for a senior program analyst, as well as a senior financial analyst in our department. And then we're looking at ways to perhaps even increase, once we have those 2 hires, hire some more potentially program analysts or senior program analysts to help with the data analysis, because with the new funding, there's a lot of reporting requirements, not just for grantees, but we need to ask them of grantees, but the legislation says that we have, the Judicial Council has to remit an annual report to this legislature. So we've never actually had a requirement like that before. We've always done it kind of informally. So it means that we're going to be moving to semi-annual reporting in order to get that year-end report ready for the legislature. In addition to that, the homelessness prevention money, it's federal money, and it's coming with that a lot of federal requirements. There's going to be quarterly program and fiscal reporting that's required, that then we have to package into report. So because of all the extra reporting requirements, we're trying to figure out right now the staffing situation in our office so that we can be geared up in order to fulfill all of those obligations.
I'm really happy to, personally, I'm really happy to hear that. I think that the office has been, in my opinion, short of staff already without these funds coming in. And I really don't know how you all have done this Herculean task that you keep on doing year in and year out with the hands that you have. I mean, and here's why. It's because the hands you guys have are so incredible. I mean, they're so competent. But it doesn't mean that you guys should be working into the late hours that you do and on weekends and. So I'm very happy to hear that. And I hope that it lays the foundation for even, exclusive of this money in the future, that we still keep a robust number of folks in the office. I think you've shared with me in the past, Duan, but it escapes me now. What is the percentage of the funds that actually go for administrative fees?
Yeah, so so we usually hover around $2.5 million in terms of our admin, and that's across IOLTA and EF, as well as the discretionary funds. I mean, in the discretionary funds, I mean, we bill that separately. I mean, we bill that like at actual time, but that that's hovered around 2.1. Last year, because we were short-staffed, we were at 1.4. So we do hope to get back to that $2 million this, because it's just, you kind of need to have enough staffing to have the proper oversight, but that doesn't account for the additional admin money that we're getting for the discretionary grants. With the HP, the first tranche, we only got $150,000. The second tranche was up to 5%, and this latest tranche is 2.5% of the absolute. So I guess it's a little bit hard to say, but if we were going to use the 2.1 baseline with the distribution of this year, which was about 60 million, let me just do that math really quick for you. It's about a 3.4%, but on our actual 1.4, it's closer to 2%. But on next year, we're going to be giving out 150 million plus. So we're not really asking for too much more than that 2.5. So it's going to be less than 2%, which is, and Rich and I have talked about this many times before, because he is in private philanthropy, which is in terms of admin, it's very, very low. And you can't really, I mean, I guess it's not fair to say that you should just take it off of the absolute number of distribution, because, we know the formula, getting formula money out is a lot easier than getting discretionary money out. But, it's still some gauge. And it's very low to be at 2%, 3% admin. And we had asked in this legislation for 5%. And there was like iterations of it. One of them, I think they came back at 1%. And then Selena and Donna did more advocacy, and we brought it back up to 2.5%.
Good. Well, thank you guys for everything you guys do. And I'm personally happy to hear that you're expanding the workflow and the team.
So we'll give you more of an update, but I think, like Elizabeth and I, our vision is not just like, cutting the checks and distributing the money, but providing that really in-depth technical assistance. And now that we're distributing so much more money, we have to go into kind of a risk management mode in terms of the proper oversight. And because it's federal money, there's just more triggers for it. We know that our grantees will have to be subject to what's called a single audit. We're figuring out with our auditors whether the state bar is also subject to the single audit, which is a higher threshold than what we were used to. The legislation requires the state bar to undergo an audit. And then our office, we actually do a higher standard. We do within that a separate audit for just IELTS formula. The single audit raises that threshold even more than the regular audit that we do. So we're going to be talking with our auditors next week to kind of get everything in line, and also so that we can start putting together resources and training for our grantees, because there's been a lot of questions that are coming in, and Selena has started to kind of provide them. We've been telling everybody, just give us 2 or 3 weeks, because to gather everything and put package together into a webinar.
Great. All right, I'm going to throw it back to you, Mr. Eric. You want to
Okay.
drive?
I think we're just going through the discussion items, the action items. So we'll roll on to the next one.
And Eric, Claire has her hand up.
Okay, go for it, Claire. I can't see that. Why can't I see that?
I can't see that either.
I know it's really weird, the limited visibility, and so yeah. So I can see it sometimes. I know I can't see it. Sometimes you can see it. I can't explain it.
I can see a chat. When a chat comes in, I can see it, but I can't see a raise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Selena, but I'm not able to see Claire. But Claire, we've talked enough about you. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to jump in and let you all know that Dwan and her team are very active with the LSFN. In fact, Dwan helped co-lead a program we did on evaluations and grant making, and the 5% number that you're discussing is that's ridiculously low. The work that they're doing is really on par with so many of our other funders, and I would just encourage you all to advocate on her behalf for a much higher number, because to do this at 1 or 2% is ridiculous. To do it at 5% is cutting right to the bone. And even if you could get up to a low double digit, a 10 or 11 number, I think that would be meaningful.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Hey, Dwan, what was this thing about evaluation? Did you guys convene something on evaluation?
No, we talked with kind of other funders. Claire put on a programming with other funders about scoring rubrics and evaluations. And so we were just sharing notes, what other funders do. And it seems to be, there is a movement within grant making to be not solely relying on numbers. And so, we support that, but as public, as a public entity and public funding in the legislature, this is kind of the tricky thing. The numbers are important. It helps with the story. So for us, it can't just be based on narrative like it can be with some private foundations. But it was a really kind of interesting conversation. We talked a lot about moving towards more outcomes measurement, which we've been doing. Claire funds some groups that do social investment on returns on social returns on investment, and so they do studies like that. So it was a brainstorming session. It was a smaller group of funders, and so Claire occasionally organizes that, and it's been really helpful for us to participate in that conversation and share what we know, learn from private philanthropy, and it's just an opportunity for us to share best practices and challenges, and so it's really,
I would be really curious and interested to hear more about and read more about this, especially as we've been talking about our own grant making and our own evaluations. We've been pushing towards more and more, measurable results and outcome orientation. So Claire, and Dwan or Selena, if you all have anything you could share with us, I think the commission as a whole, but I definitely would love to read more and get a better sense of what you guys are doing.
I can email you and also the commission, but maybe perhaps if you feel like it might be worthwhile, perhaps we can invite Claire to do a short presentation at a commission meeting that's not so fully packed like the next one.
That would be
because I think that would be really helpful. The other thing we talked a lot about was scoring rubrics at that meeting, and sharing notes. I shared our HP scoring rubric. I shared a few, and I was able to review some of the other scoring rubrics for private foundations, and so that has been really helpful.
Well, if we have time in the November, Eric and I can't make any more of these decisions. We're done. But Kim and Rich are here. If there's room in the November lineup on the agenda, that would be really great as we're looking at next year and additional funding.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Are you
All right,
up for that, Claire?
She's on mute. Oh, there. Oh, Claire, did you unmute yourself?
I think I should be unmuted now.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to participate. I've also been brought in and I'm part of the CLA grant making team as well now. So happy to share what's going on in the community. And as I said, we are thrilled to have Dwan and others who are doing grant making on the government side participating with the LSFN because we think that the entire funding community needs to be working as a team.
Yeah, absolutely right. Great.
Juan, do you want to move on to the agenda?
Sure. So the next one is a preview of the upcoming Trust Fund Commission agenda. So let me share my screen. Great. Can you all see this?
Mhm.
Okay. So I'll just go down the line. So that it's just approval of action summary, and then there's a shares report. You know, we always invite our two board liaisons to provide an update, and you know, they'll probably go over maybe a recap of our agenda items that were approved at the last board meeting. And then Donna and I are actually going to do agenda item C together, and it's the same staffing update, but I think the legislative activities is where it's going to be probably we'll field a lot of questions from commissioners. So I'll provide kind of the ledge update related to our grant funding, SB 498, which increases the poverty threshold from 125 to 200. The governor signing the budget last month, and so forth. And then Donna will go into SB 211. And as you all know, SB 211 is what expands the authority of the commission. I'm sure there are commissioners that have a lot of questions. I've been getting a lot of questions that I actually don't have more of an update than why I sent out an email. The last email with the link to the language that's in print. My understanding of that is that's the proposal that's in print right now. The legislature is on recess. I'm not sure until when. Selena might have more insights into that. But we should have, I think, more updates when they're back from recess. And I think we're supposed to get some finality to that in August. So we'll know one way or another whether that legislation passes and what the final version will look like.
Do we know who is behind that legislation? Who's pushing it?
We don't know. We know that the legislature contacted Donna and said that we'd like to vest more authority in the commission, but we don't know if that came just from the legislature, perhaps because of all the additional money that's being distributed. I don't personally know.
I'm happy to give a tiny bit more background on that. I think most of you remember Appendix I review from a few years ago. And there was a working group created to protect the Trust Fund Commission, and several legislative staff were part of that working group. And so I think through this process, they realized there does need to be oversight from the state bar, but a little bit more codification of the commission to make sure that it continues to exist, specifically because you guys are going to be distributing, as Dwan said, I think over the next couple of years, over $200 million in new funding that the legislature's identified. So they want to make sure that if they are entrusting the commission with all these funds, that it is that's clearly a commission that's codified in statute.
That raises an interesting point, Selena, that I've talked to one of the other commission members about recently, and that is that there are precious few of the commission members working aggressively in the various committees. And one of the suggestions made in the Appendix I report was that the commission be reduced in size, given the amount of work that's been involved and the need to distribute that fairly amongst all commissioners. I think it's fairly obvious we really can't reduce the size of the commission. And there are insights brought by members of the judiciary and by client members that are irreplaceable. So when all is said and done, I think it's important to distribute the work amongst as many commissioners as possible, to be transparent with potential members of the commission as to what the work requirements are, and to incorporate as many people as we can in doing all this work.
Right. So yeah, again, I don't have too much more updates on SB 211, but Donna is the person that's been interfacing the most with the legislature, so she could probably answer a lot of your questions. And then we'll talk about when we go into the business items, and it's a very actually heavy agenda item because we need the commission to kind of approve the distribution plans for a lot of the new funding. So the partnership grant, the first two, A and B, deal with partnership grant. The first one is to approve the slate of 2022 partnership grant funds, and that's pretty routine. I don't believe there's anything controversial about it. It was supposed to go up for approval at the last commission meeting, but there was one program that that committee didn't feel quite comfortable making a recommendation, but since that has since been resolved, and they'll be recommending funding for that particular program. So I think that should be pretty straightforward. Then B is probably going to warrant a little bit more of a discussion because this has to deal with a distribution plan for the additional partnership grant money. So as you all know, the governor's budget increased EEF by $50 million. The commission is going to be distributing 45 of that $50 million. And then part of that, the 10% goes to partnership. So it's a big increase for partnership grants. So that committee met last week and they have a proposal that it's quite complicated. I'm not going to be able to, it's dubbed Partnership Grants 2.0, and there's like 2 tracks on how to get funding. So Christina Vanarelli and Elizabeth are going to be presenting on that agenda item. And then our big ticket item that we do every year is approval of eligibility for IELTS and EF funds. So the Eligibility and Budget Review Committee committee has been meeting for the last several months to do eligibility review conferences and to kind of hash out all the eligibility issues. There were a number of new programs that that applied for funding this year, and so this one probably warrants a heavier discussion because there is at least one organization that we're recommending to not be found eligible. That's a new applicant. And so we probably should discuss that at length so that the commission feels comfortable with the committee's recommendation.
Duan, do you anticipate that is controversial, that recommendation?
I don't think it's controversial. The qualified expenditures number for that program is less than 10%. I want to say it's like 4 or 5%. It's very, very low. But that program it is planning to come to do public comments. They're trying to pursue a statutory change. So part of this is they want more visibility into why there should be a statutory change. So I don't think it's necessarily controversial, but they are going to be attending, as at least that's what they've said to us to make that advocacy pitch to you all.
And Brady will be there, right?
Just curious, did we go through the process with that organization that we did with organizations that were found ineligible last year of having commissioners meet with them and explain the reasons?
Yeah, so we had an eligibility review conference with them where it was explained very clearly, like we have to, be in compliance with the statute, and we have read it to be at least half of your expenditures, and this isn't even a close call. It's just that's yeah, it's not even, it's not close at all. It's not like they're at 49 or 52 or 45 even. I want to say it's like 3.5 or 4%.
And Duan, we're going to have all the supporting documents.
We're going to have all the supporting documents. So the staff is really busy working on that. Everything I've told the staff that this is definitely all of these hot button items we want to post next Friday, so that you all have a week to review. And because it's pretty heavy in materials, in my email to the commission, I'll identify the ones that probably should review a little bit closer, and it'll be the new applicants and the distribution plans for the new money. And Selena, you have your hand raised.
Selena has her, yeah.
Oh, I was just curious, for the program who has less than 10% qualifying expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
How would you characterize the bulk of their other work? What would you say is their primary purpose based on their budget?
Well, they definitely target low-income communities, but it's a holistic approach. So they provide, there's like a food bank, like a homeless shelter. I mean, it's a very large organization, and they do wraparound services. So their qualified expenditures, it's low percentage, but it's a high number because their organization is very large. So I think the qualified expenditures, even though it's only at 3, 4, or 5%, is a bit over $1 million. It's just the organization itself is very large. So it's, you know, it's a policy decision. I think, you know, they obviously are welcome to come and make public comments, and we've shared kind of the meeting details and all of that with them. And then the other sticking point, there is a new organization that's coming back again. They applied last year, they were not found eligible. They're coming back and they've kind of remedied most of the situation. What we still feel a little bit uncomfortable is that the executive director is one of the board members, and he's part-time. And they're going to be hiring a new executive director who's a non-attorney. So there might not technically be anybody on staff that's an attorney, but they're a pro bono model. So their pro bono attorneys are providing the supervision and the advice. It does feel a little bit uncomfortable, but we don't actually have a rule that says you need to have at least one full-time attorney on staff. So it's something that definitely this is the rules committee is gonna need to look a little bit closer at when we go to do the grants administration and compliance issues, because I think we probably do want to build in a little bit more of a safeguard would be, I think, the staff recommendation.
So I see this is discussion and approval on several of them, especially these ones that you're discussing. So we'll be voting.
You'll be voting, and I've asked the staff to work with the committee chairs for eligibility to do a presentation so that you guys get into a little bit more of the facts, because again, because it's eligibility, it's not just not counting something that's not qualifying an activity and they still get the funding. Eligibility is such an important decision that again probably warrants a heavier discussion, and so that you all feel comfortable with the analysis that the committee has done. And then the pro bono allocation, that should be pretty straightforward. And then agenda item E is going to be a bit of a heavy discussion in terms of the distribution plans for the new homelessness money. Then I'll do a really quick update on IALTO revenue, which is it's been great the last 2 months since we've met. The remittances for May and June have come back higher than what we originally projected. As you recall, the commission took a moderate approach, and it's leaning more on the aggressive than the moderate. So I'll have figures to share with you. So that's great. And then there's an update on how we're dealing with expungement infractions. As you recall, there was a stopgap measure for the upcoming application, but then in terms of a long-term solution, this issue was being delegated back to the rules committee to figure out a long-term solution. That working group met, and they're actually we've been working with Selena and executive staff at the state bar to pursue a statutory change. So that's the biggest update, and that's moving fairly quickly. So I'll have language of the proposed changes, and Selena, I'm going to be sending you over the working group's recommendations today. And then, I added the LRAP working group update, but this is a really heavy agenda item. We may want to just take this off for this and defer to November because it's such a heavy agenda item. And then there are liaisons report. So it's a very packed meeting. I mean, most of those agenda items are going to be 20, 30 minutes long.
Dwan, on expungement, what is the statutory change? Are they seeking to have expungement qualify as a civil legal service, or?
Yeah, so to have it explicitly spelled out that it's qualifying activities, and that programs can be able to spend IALTO and EF funding for those purposes. But the commission, the working group did narrow it a little bit in terms of post-conviction work, not work that goes to the underlying offense. So we've been working on tweaking that language. And Selena, we do have something to share with you.
And Kim has her hand up, and now Selena has her hand up. So Kim, go ahead.
Okay, so just having gone through this agenda, I would say that we need to rethink whether we can accept Claire's generous offer to do a presentation at that meeting. I mean, our agendas are always packed.
Yeah, Kim, we were thinking about the next meeting, the November.
So you're talking about when?
November.
January?
November meeting.
November. Oh, right, this is August. Okay, all right. Good, thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, it's when you preside, Kim.
That's right.
Well, it's my co-chair right there. I will not be at the August meeting, by the way. So that was another reason why I wanted to make sure it wasn't happening then.
And I'll be in Hawaii, although I will try. The golf course is calling.
What an excuse.
I know. Okay, so actually, what does it look like in terms of the number of folks we have for the next meeting, the August meeting? Do we have,
I think we're still getting people have previous RSV, but Kim, closer to the day of the meeting, sends out another one to make sure that people are still, and I think she's still collecting them. But we have quorum for that meeting. We always have comfortable quorum. When we don't, we usually, I would let the two chairs know if we wanted to move the meeting, but.
Perfect. Well, I'm in agreement with you about maybe moving the LRAP conversation. This is a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but I didn't get how in depth we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, just some of these discussions, you say 30 minutes, but I can see them going longer.
Mm-hmm. And Selena has her hand raised.
Yeah, this is just about the record clearance, expungement, and infraction work. We are convening a meeting of directors of litigation and some executive directors this Thursday with the new language. And I also shared with Dwan and with Brady that I spoke with legislative staff, and they said August 16th is fine. We were worried because we are on a tight timeline, but they are on recess, and they said August 16th is fine. So it can be a robust discussion if needed at the full commission meeting. But what we think is interesting is that at the meeting, the Rules Revision Committee meeting last week, it seemed like there was a decision, which made sense at the time, of not including infraction like defense work, to only include post-conviction infraction work. And we're going to investigate that a little bit with the community to figure out what organizations are doing any infraction defense work prior to conviction, and what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. Specifically around advocacy around infractions. I know LA just passed a new anti-camping ordinance that a lot of organizations are opposed to. And a lot of the work, my understanding is it's really working with local government. So it's more like policy work.
Oh yeah, the advocacy, we're saying that's fine. It's just, yeah.
But then we're like, what else do they do? And I have to admit, I don't know what individual programs are doing. And so we're gonna talk with programs and get a sense of it, just to inform the commission's decision. Because even if the commission decides to not fund any pre-conviction infraction work, it's just ticket work. We just want to figure out, are organizations finding other funding for this, or is this something that we may want to revisit in a couple of years? From talking with programs, it seems like the work is funded with other grants anyway, but I feel like I can give more information to the commission on August 13th.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Eric.
Yeah, I the 2 points. One, so on the change of the poverty definition, the threshold for doing qualifying work from 125 to 200. So I understand that's likely to, that either has passed or it's likely to pass. But remind me what the effective dates are. So you're saying that for purposes of determining eligibility, we're using the old definition for 2022, right? The process we just went through used the old definition of indigency. But for purposes of actual work in 2022, they can actually serve clients whose incomes are up to 200% of the poverty level?
Yeah, January 1st is the effective date. So starting January 1st, 2022, they can use our funding to serve clients up to 200%.
Okay. The second thing is on infractions. I mean, I just came from serving as a judge in traffic court, actually, which is just all infractions. And I don't know what the organizations do, but I can tell you that these people need a lot of help. I mean, the fines that they're subjected to in traffic court are just completely oppressive, and to get some advice about what they can plead to, and how much of a fine reduction maybe they can get, and get community service. All these options are available, and I don't know if people, and that they're going to be incurring big fines if they don't show up in court. There's a failure to appear thing. I think there is a lot of room for helping people in that area, actually.
Is that room created by the absence of public defenders?
Well, the absence of advice. I mean, yeah, public defenders. There are pretty much no lawyers in traffic court. I mean, the cop shows up and the defendants all show up representing themselves. So yeah, some opportunity for advice I think would be helpful. Again, I don't know if people are doing it or if that's what they're proposing to spend the money on, but these fines are terrible. I mean, just really terrible, crushing.
Brady seemed like he had something to say on the matter. You were about to say something, Brady, or no?
Oh, it's probably not important, but just on the timing issue, the way it's set up is that they can start using the money and counting it towards primary, start using the money to sort of establish a track record. But even next year, since we'll still be looking at the 2021 expenditures, we'll be using the old definition of poverty in making our decisions next summer. So it's sort of it's a phase in that makes sense. They can start using the money on everybody.
Okay.
But then the next.
Yeah, it'd have to be the next time.
This summer, because
Yeah.
we'll be looking back at calendar year 2021 and 2022, we'll still be using the old definition for one more year. And it'll be the next year when we're looking back at 2022 that we'll start using the definition.
Got it.
And I just want to thank Brady for working through that language, because the legislative staff just wanted to know what language to put in. And we kept arguing like it's an equity issue because small programs don't have other magical sources of funding this year to start serving new clients in 2021. But the larger organizations that had other sources could tomorrow, if they think the bill is going to pass, they'll say, well, we'll start serving easy clients who are over income and we can count them and beef up our 2023 grants. So Brady, I know it was hard to figure out the exact language, but the idea is this is equitable for small programs to not disadvantage them and shrink their 2023 grants.
It was like almost like an LSAT problem, figuring out the
Does the red door go to the green room to the whatever? Claire has a comment in the chat.
I can read it. So Claire says that the Legal Services Funders Network recently did a program on fees and fines on July 22nd that touched on many of these issues. Their current speakers were ACLU of Northern California, Root and Rebound, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, EPSLC, and Legal Services for Prisoners with Children. And it's recorded, so we can send that out too, right?
I'd like to see that actually.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Great. All right, Mr. Eric.
I think, so are we finished with your reporting, Juan?
Yes, yes. That is my item. So it's just the D that's left, the catch-all.
Catch-all. Oh, yeah. So I don't think was that the priorities?
Yeah, if there's anything else you all wanted to talk about for a future meeting, Rich and Kim, at some point, I'm probably going to email you so that we can start planning for the upcoming term and committee assignments and committee chairs and all that good stuff. Some preparation before you take over officially.
Well,
Now,
I
are we
say
in search of
everyone,
new members? Are we looking for new commission members? Are we low or?
Yeah, so the commission, I mean, I know a little about that. So the commission or the state bar had no appointments for this next year, but the Judicial Council had a number of them. And there were some recommendations made already to the Judicial Council that they are sitting on. And I guess we expect to hear from them in September about new commissioners.
yeah, by September, we should have the new commission members named and appointed, and they'll be joining us in the November meeting. But in terms of, do we need folks for the following year, meaning 2022, 2023? If that's your question, we always do. So I think, always looking out for and recruiting and having folks send in resumes so that we could start to review would be great. I'd love to. I don't know exactly what the term would be because we don't have a nominating committee any longer, but maybe it's a recruiting committee, subcommittee, or working group where we can start to get those resumes in rather than trying so quickly to get the resumes in at the very last minute, and having some conversations with people, see what their backgrounds are, is there a fit, kind of those types of things we used to do, I think would be helpful for everyone.
Yeah. Duan, do you know how many slots we will have?
Yes, I was gonna say the complication is the SB 211. So before with the term limits, there really weren't term limits. I mean, there was a change in the board rules, as you know, that moved it from up to 2 terms of 3 years, so 6 years down to 1 term of 4 years. But there's also a provision in the board book that says that the board of trustees can keep on pretty much appointing indefinitely if they thought that the commissioner was valuable. So there really wasn't term limits. With the legislation, there are like fixed term limits. So depending on what it looks like, the final version, where we might have more turnover seats. But I think if it's status quo, I think it's usually about 4 or 5 on a cycle, a year. That, you know, last year we didn't have any. It was because during Appendix I, we went to appoint, like Kim and Rich are part of that reappointment, and so it threw off the cycle a little bit. But next year, if it's status quo, we'll have about 4 or 5. But then, depending on SB 211, we may be recruiting more. And this is where we need to figure out, because there's going to be some appointments by the legislature, kind of how that process works, and if there's a way for us to work with the legislature. I don't know, but that would be great if there is, to figure out those appointments.
I mean, there's a related issue, and that is, can we conduct hybrid meetings that include remote attendance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions. I'm glad Donna's coming, because it's clearly there are a lot of, I'm not sure she'll have all the answers, but at least we'll get closer to the meat of the matter. Selena still has her hand up.
Related to term limits, Donna and I both suggested to the legislature removing the term limits for judicial council appointees. Since judicial council appointees currently don't have term limits, it feels like it's taking away a power they currently have. And at least the last conversation I had, the legislative staff who was working on this issue seemed amenable to that. And also, the language I most recently saw from Donna suggested that the chairs and vice chairs, or the co-chairs and the co-vice chairs, could be selected by the judicial council, rather than the board of trustees, if they're trying to do a little bit more separation. And so that was a suggestion from Donna that I think the legislative staff seems amenable to that too. That part seems good. And I can't recall the exact language, but I think that the bill has your current Bagley-Keene requirements. So however the remote meeting however remote hybrid meetings is interpreted, I think that would be under Bagley-Keene. I think that would control the future one too, assuming this language is adopted.
Yeah, and you know, right now with Bagley-Keene, the governor's kind of the meeting requirements are more relaxed. That's why you all don't have to notice your location of where you're zooming in or calling in from. I can't imagine that's going to stay like that forever, but we don't know when it's going to be back to status quo.
But there hasn't been any discussions.
There hasn't been discussion. You know, the board of trustees meeting, the one that Eric and I presented, they did a hybrid. So we got to see kind of how a hybrid looks like. And I would say it was the technology was pretty smooth. So Eric and I were remote. So we zoomed in, but there were half of their board members were in person in Los Angeles, and 3 or 4 of their board members zoomed in too. So they had like one of the squares, you could see everybody in LA, and the other squares were the individual people zooming in. I thought it worked fairly well. I mean, the awkwardness of that meeting was they decided on having the meeting, and then, you know, LA went back into having to have masks indoors. So then everybody was on masks that was in LA. So it wasn't that as natural as it could have been. But for that, I thought that was, yeah, it worked fine. So we moved towards some hybrid. State Bar has the technology to do that. In LA, they don't have it set up for San Francisco yet to do that type of hybrid meetings.
Should we think about, well, I guess with COVID the way it is, I don't know, maybe we ought to just continue with Zoom for a while.
I highly recommend that. That's what we do. You know, my husband's office, they're in Silicon Valley. They were asked to come back 2 times a week. Mm-hmm. And then by October, they were going to go back 3 times a week. And that's now being, you know, pulled back because of the Delta variant and the numbers. So I think we just, safe is better.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think does this bring us to 5 and a motion to adjourn. Wow, we did this in 50 minutes.
Yeah, Kim and Rich, see if you can be this efficient.
That's right. See
We'll
how
do our
efficient-
best, Eric.
Well, I honestly couldn't think of two better folks
Yeah.
coming in and chairing us this next year with all that's before us, the funds, the work, the shifting around with SB 211, all of that's going on. I think the two of you, we're in great hands.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that the point Eric made about filling in vacancies is vitally important. We really need to have good, strong commissioners who are willing to give us so much time as you two have. I mean, the two of you have worked beyond, above and beyond. I hope all the other commissioners recognize it. I know staff does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really echo what Rich has said, both in terms of the commitment you two have given, but also the need for commissioners to understand, you know, they gotta pull their weight. I mean, I don't know how I ended up on 4 subcommittees, but I'm pulling off 2 of them. And there's just gotta be more people stepping up.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's not a typical kind of appointment. I think the participation is it's really serious. And I think who's ever doing the interviewing and communicating needs to not scare the applicant, but just say, you know, it's a really serious commitment.
Well, it's a working commission.
It
right?
is. It is a working
It's a
commission. That's the
working
perfect way to
commission, and I-
describe it. Yeah.
And I think people need to know that. And that's why, you know, if there's a way, and I want to make sure that we're not stepping on anyone's toes, but not a nominating committee, but a recruiting or some kind of a working group that we could start asking for those resumes, start having the conversations, really getting a sense of who are they, what's their background, how much is already on their plate, right? Where else are they committed before we can, however great they might be, but we need folks to come in here and roll up their sleeves and work. And have fun. We also have fun,
Yeah, we do.
in case anyone listens to this recording.
I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot from all of you, so I'm very appreciative of the opportunity.
And, you know, on behalf of the staff, we can't thank the 4 of you enough. I mean, you know, Eric and Bonachet and I have regular evening calls and the weekend calls, and the 4 of you have just always been there to support the staff. And honestly, you guys are our rock the last few years with all the turbulence. So thank you.
Definitely my pleasure.
All right. We'll see you
Okay.
next week or
Hey,
whenever.
we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.